congressional hearing confronting the rising crime in New York turned into a political spectacle between Democrats and Republicans, with victims of crime brought in to testify caught in the middle.
The reason we are here in New York is because you have Democrats, you have citizens calling for some relief from this pain, and we are here not to use anyone, but to uplift the voices of brave people who are here to tell their story.
I want justice for you, but this is an absurd and poor reflection of who we are as Americans.
For the district attorney, justice isn't blind. It's about looking for opportunities to advance a political agenda.
Well, witnesses were called to testify before the House Judiciary Committee, and one of them was Democratic Queens City Councilman Robert Holden, who joins us this morning to discuss the outcome of yesterday's hearing. So, Councilman Holden, thank you for being here. Appreciate the time.
Good morning.
So let's get into this, because you serve on the City Council's Public Safety Committee, right? So you're very familiar with crime stats across the city, not just right now, but for the last couple of decades, right? You're a lifelong New Yorker, so you've witnessed a lot of change. Let me get your perspective, first and foremost, on the congressional hearing being held in New York City. We had the Manhattan Borough President who called it a political stunt right here on the PIX11 Morning News yesterday. What was your take?
Well, it was unfortunate that it turned into that, but it shouldn't be. We never hear from the victims of crimes in New York. I've been on the Public Safety Committee, like you said. I've been on 5.5 years. We never held a hearing on the victims' side of things, what they go through. How can we support them? We only have hearings on criminal justice, reform, or the way inmates or prisoners are treated in jail, but we never hear from the victims. And that's what we were there to do. And it's unfortunate that my colleagues in the Democratic Party kept going back to that. I wanted to hear from the victims. I think everyone wants to, and how to make New York safer.
Yeah, well, we just heard Mr. Jordan speaking there at the hearing yesterday. I just want to know what your response is to Richie Torres's tweet. Fact check. New York City had 2,000 more murders in 1993 than in 2022. Also, Robert Holden won as a Republican in the 2017 general election. Nice try, Jim Jordan. What do you think of that?
Well, for 50 years, I've been a Democrat. And the fact that I have support from both parties now. I ran and I won a primary 2 years ago in a Democratic primary. So judges run on all different lines, don't they? You vote for judges on Republican, Democrat. So I've served this neighborhood for 40 years on the community boards and Little League and everything. People knew me, and I won. I'm not part of really political parties. I'm a civic leader for again, 40 years. So anybody accuses me of being a Republican, most of them, the people that are saying that, I've been a Democrat longer than they've been alive. So that's below.
I mean, you're a Democrat, but you have crossed party lines, right? You endorsed Lee Zeldin in the race for governor. You endorsed George Santos.
But that should be celebrated.
Yeah.
That I could run on both party lines.
Right.
The fact that I have widespread support.
Okay.
That I'm not political.
Understood. I just want to talk to you about disapproval of Alvin Bragg's policies on crime and also support of rolling back some of the changes to bail reform. You have been outspoken on both of those issues, right? So let's focus in on the bail reform issue first and foremost, because that's what's kind of holding up the New York State budget right now. Do you think, Councilman, that giving judges more discretion over bail for defendants would make a difference? And if so, why?
Of course. Let's look at the bail reform and discovery issues. We've had 17 straight years up until 2019 of decline in crime. 17 straight years in New York City. New York City under Mayor Bloomberg and part of de Blasio was the safest big city in the country. What happens in 2019 after bail reform? Crime starts going up, and dramatically. So anybody points, that's where you have to look to. Now, why wouldn't we want to put people who are committing multiple crimes away? We are allowing, by the way, New York City has the toughest gun laws in the nation. Yep. Yet we can have people, 5 or 6 people, the same person shooting 5 different times, and he's out on the streets again.
Yeah, I'm just curious, though. Alvin Bragg is under a great deal of scrutiny by conservatives. Do you think he should resign?
Yes, or be removed. Listen, the guy is a terrible prosecutor, a DA. Why? He only wins half his cases in felonies. Imagine that, half. A good prosecutor should have probably a rate of 85 to 90. I'd even take 75%, but a 50%, half the time he loses felonies and those people walk, that's disgusting.
Yeah, and I think that's why some folks like Richie Torres and Manhattan Borough President yesterday were calling this a political stunt, bringing this to New York City, because it's a lot of the Republican talking points, which is going after DA Alvin Bragg and saying it's a retaliation for what exactly happened to former President Trump. Do you see this move of having this hearing in New York City, not in D.C., was the appropriate way to go about it?
Like I said, I don't care where it is. I think you could hold public safety hearings in every city. Again, it all started with disrespect for the police and from the George Floyd incident, and it's gone on from there. Many cities are experiencing what we're experiencing, but I don't want this to happen to New York City, where we live. And my constituents, their number one concern, and I think everyone's constituents, and even Richie Torres's, care about public safety, don't we? We want safe streets. Who doesn't want safe streets?
Why do you think it's worse than it was before?
Well, we just mentioned bail reform. People, are not being jailed as often as they should. They're allowed to walk because of DAs like Bragg, because of bail reform, discovery. You look at the records since 2019, and it's frightening. We're going back to the bad old days of New York City. I lived through that.
Well, yeah, and you're bringing that up, right? So let's go there, because during yesterday's hearing, you said New York was the worst you've ever seen. You lived here all your life, like you said. You've raised your family here. But I want to talk about some of the stats, because the NYPD data shows that year to date, major crimes have remained the same this year, but they're up 45% from 2 years ago. However, still not as bad as it was in the 90s, which was up more than 70%. So I want to have you listen to right here, Public Advocate Jumaane Williams talking about this, and then get your reaction.
The truth is that New York City remains among the safest large cities in the country, despite the nationwide increase in crime. Unfortunately, crime rates in New York City have slightly dropped even more in some categories since last year.
And that's what the Manhattan Borough President was saying yesterday right here on PIX11. There were other cities that have higher crime rates than New York City, could have had the hearing there. What do you think about the numbers today versus where they were in the 90s?
Well, again, of course, we don't have as many murders. We had 2,000 murders back in the early 90s, and that was bad. But in the 90s, I didn't see the disrespect for police. I didn't see all the shoplifting, the property crimes. Nobody's being put away now for property crimes. I've had precinct commanders call me and say, we keep arresting the same guy for stealing cars, and he's out. They never go to jail. By the way, New York City, you want to talk about stats? New York City has the lowest incarceration rate per 100,000 people in the nation of big cities. We're 60th on the list. We don't put people away. We need to lock people up who are committing crimes. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, well, yeah, unfortunately, I've run out of time, but we appreciate your take this morning. Councilman Robert Holden, thanks for joining us.